Cool. Well, welcome everyone. And I think Jocelyn's already given the intro to the topic, but yeah, once again, the theme, the main theme is the summer camp and reflections coming from that. We thought how to make it interesting and have a couple of format suggestions, and we'll take it in turns with Ivan. But I'll kick things off by saying that, yeah, the camp is a place where people come together and get into some practice around microsolidarity in a way that doesn't happen remotely, and have experience of organizing a gathering like this for the first time, figure out things how to do um, things like kitchen for lots of people, and run the program and so on and so forth. And I've been to two, and it feels really strange to be hosting this call having not been to this camp. It feels like this big black hole. And so what we'll do is fill out this hole by having a few people who were in the camp tell us just a couple of minutes of their reflections of what it was like, what they liked about it, anything that's just to convey the sense of what this camp was like for the others who were not there. And I can invite you to do this popcorn style if you like. I have one prompt because I was in a circle with Alex in Spain, and we were talking about the daunting task of organizing an event like this and doing this microsolidarity style. So I'd love to hear that perspective if you want to share how it was to organize it. Maybe that comes up later. But let's kick off with some reflections on what the camp was like from those of you who were there.
I can tell Rich wants to say something.
I always want to say something. I'm just like trying to be a good person and leave space for others. Um, Short version is camp was awesome. Um, the venue was really supportive. Um, Amazing hosts to the venue. Like some of us really got to know them and connect in a deep way. Um, Jesse, who was officially like logistics guy for camp, also wound up like, fixing engines on the property and hanging out for an extra week and like getting really involved. And it was really lush. They just a I basically shorthand call it like a hippie farm. Like just old school permaculture artists back to the land doing the good thing. So a really beautiful natural setting. Um and the physical layout, like I think where it was Jocelyn, someone was saying, no, I don't know. Someone said yesterday how supportive the venue was just in terms of like having it was Jocelyn, these different separated spaces. So it's a great big house, big community house where we were eating all of our meals. And then you have a little bit of a walk to get to the big geodesic dome, which was our main like meeting room slash musical studio, dance embodiment play space. And just having a sort of like literally 90-second walk to get from one space to the next just meant that you had a chance to like drop your just have a moment of quiet between one thing and the next and a chance to sort of attune like, oh, I was there and things were a certain way and now I'm here and things are a different way, and I'm kind of attuning myself to what differences are being invited by that different space. There's different activities happening. There's like 50 something people there. Nati had built this incredible structure out of recycled fabrics, fort blanket. It's just this like unbelievable 8-meter tent with bright colors and just really playful and cozy and really inviting a certain kind of hanging out that you don't do under fluorescent lights and like conference chairs. Um, so venue was awesome. The main thing that I experienced was just having loads of time to play music with people and to like really play the game of activating each other's creative agency and like we had a jam with 6 or 7 people who had never played before, and we did it live in front of an audience of 40 people, and they loved it and they were dancing and like that kind of very loosey-goosey activity, which I find very, very fun. Um, and it seemed like a very high percentage of the participants had a pretty decent level of like feeling settled and grounded in some degree of belonging and like yeah, for me that's like the one of the points of microsolidarity is that can we actually design protocols and practices that are context independent that work for most people to help them land into a new group and feel like they belong there. um that felt really good. um there was lots of other stuff happen, and I will now share the floor with someone else and continue eating my dinner.
I wanted to also, thanks, Rich. I wanted to ask who wasn't in the camp. Okay, good. I was just thinking if everybody was in the camp, then maybe we need less of this. Okay, anybody else, please?
I found it really cool seeing so many people go from like I don't know you or anyone else here at all to like seeming extremely cozy in like a few days. I think it was I had never experienced a situation where that happened quite so quickly, which I thought was really interesting.
Thank you.
Um, for me, my experience of the camp, well, I came into the camp mostly with the intention of figuring out what microsolidarity is about on a vibe level. I did the vibes program, which ironically was actually less about the vibe and more about like just a taster of tools that are being used. Uh, so my expectation or hope from the camp was to get more idea of a feeling about what kind of people are involved and why and how they feel about being there as well. Um, and I think the camp did a good job at that. Uh, I really appreciated. Uh, I really appreciated the degree in which structure was implemented. Uh, it was just the right balance of structure and structurelessness, I think, for the time that we were given. And I'm saying that mostly from a perspective of having attended to other camps this year where there was way less structure. And it really made a world of a difference, I think. Um, yeah, I found it quite interesting that um, that like I knew why I was there and what I wanted the camps to be. But this wasn't, I think, universal. Like a lot of people were like, or maybe people came there with different wishes about what the camp should be, and different kind of expectations about what they would encounter. And sometimes those, well, I mean, they've resulted in a clash. I found that interesting, and I think the main reason why I'm here in this call still, like why I have stuck with Microsolidarity and why I decided to come to the network call is that the way this clash was negotiated and managed, that I found really good, and the amount of goodwill and curiosity and skill and intention in trying to just set things right that like yeah, was top notch. Yeah, I want to see more of that.
Okay, thank you. Well, I hope this conveys a bit of an initial sense of what the camp was like for those who were not there. It has given it to me. I've seen the pictures of the site, and it did look amazing. So I'm still disappointed I couldn't go this year. So what we want to do next is get into this question of, with microsolidarity being an exploration of design of belonging. And so we thought we would, in this session, look at what is there that we've learned or to learn or discovered about the design of belonging in this camp, kind of loosely. But there are many ways to obviously enter this topic. And so what we thought we'd do now is split everyone into breakout rooms of 3 and have a little brainstorm, a 10-minute brainstorm about the questions that are alive for us in this. And what we'll do then is create a fishbowl experience where 5 people at a time can go in and riff off these questions and go in whatever depth they want. And when they feel like they've run out of things to say, they can free up their space to someone else. So we kind of achieve a bit of a depth and have everyone involved, and then we'll open the floor or do something else to wrap. So to begin with, let's give us 10 minutes in small groups to come up with some alive questions about microsolidarity and design for belonging.
Cool. I've got the breakout rooms ready, but I just wanted to I'm just looking at the agenda and I think we are a bit ahead of time. So before we jump in there, I was wondering if there was any other voices that wanted to bring anything else up, particularly people we haven't heard and who were at the camp.
Oh yeah, maybe we are ahead a bit. I looked in the wrong line.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, we do have time for definitely one more reflection while you think of questions. Oh, next session.
Sarah, did
Sorry,
you want to?
like it.
I saw Alex come off mute. Okay. One thing that I continue to love about Microsolidarity events is it's this great filter that ensures the people who show up have this interest, curiosity, wonder around giving and getting reflections and like this kind of meta level conversation and solidarity. Kuba and I had a really fun moment. He introduced a phrase to my life of panicking joyfully. And it was towards the end of the camp. And in hearing that phrase, and in retrospect of what had happened the past few days, I was caught by this phrase because it so captured the way I was able to respond to the unexpected as someone with a role and responsibility in the kitchen at camp. There were several moments of unexpected turbulence. I don't even know who knows this, but the first night dinner that I was lead chef of, and this is like, almost 50 of us had just rolled into camp, and like the first night dinner feels so important to me. And I went to the opening circle to just like plug in. And when I came back to the kitchen, all the power had gone out in the building. And so I couldn't turn on the oven, oh my gosh. I was and I can imagine a different version of myself being really unsettled by that unpredicted issue. But I panicked joyfully and I found Gabrielle and we resolved the issue and dinner was maybe like 20 minutes late. But I think I just had the sense of like, it's all right. Like things happen. People will give you grace. We're all here together. And that's just my little story about like what I think really underlies the microsolidarity vibe is this thing around, togetherness and like things will come up. And because I have solidarity, a felt sense of solidarity, I can get through it joyfully. So that was a big part of camp for me.
Okay. Panicking joyfully. I'll take that away. Alex, and did you? Or am I volunteering you? Or did you want to then speak?
I can speak to my experience. For me, also because you basically asked a question earlier that sounded like it was sort of maybe meant for me. I feel like a beautiful experience I had was showing up as I wanted to show up and being received well in that. That was just like, oh wait, I can do the things I'm good at or that I'm inclined to do or that feel good, and that will be received well, and that would be enough, and that was magical. And this, like, I remember on the third day, no, fourth day, I don't know, there was some crisis, and I was like, well, if I'm needed, I will know that I will be needed, and if I'm not needed, then it'll be fine. And so this like confidence just in like the social fabric that I developed over these, well, months with the hosting team, the hosting crew, but also the days of the supporter crew and the people coming together. And yeah, I'm like I was just telling someone today, I think that I'm still looking back to the Microsolidarity camp as like the North Star for what I want living in community to be like. And that's one of the questions I'm holding right now of how to do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. So I'll open up the breakout rooms now. So yeah, we'll give you 10 minutes, and the purpose of the breakout rooms, as Julia said, is kind of to come up with some questions. You can use some of like the themes that have already come up that people have been sharing. So things like the venue and how that affected the experience of the camp, the sense of belonging, what made it that it was easy to kind of build that sense of belonging. From what I heard, it was there, and it kind of like, even though maybe a lot of you didn't know each other, that sense of belonging came through quite quickly. Structure versus structurelessness, unexpected turbulence, bringing you unique gifts, and any other things that you can that weren't mentioned that were part of your experience. Maybe for the people who were there, kind of maybe like a more reflective kind of retro, what questions feel like you want to kind of reflect on? What would be some good things to look back on and see what worked, what didn't, what do we want to grow in the future? And then maybe, I can put those prompts in the chat. I will put them in there right now, actually, before I open up the room, because sometimes they get lost. Oh, copying into Zoom, sometimes it's just... Okay, I've put those in the chat, and maybe for the people who weren't there, just what are you curious about? What do you want to find out more about regarding what came up? Cool. I will open up the breakout rooms now, and we will call you back in. Hold on, I'm just going to move some people around so that it's more. Oh no, that looks good. Cool. I will call you back in 10 minutes. They should be open now. I put Julia in there. I guess that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's good. Should I go to room? Which room should I go to? There's one in room 3, room 4, room 5.
Yeah, I guess any of the ones with 2 people in it.
Cool. I won't go to one with Rich. I'll go to.
Should I go into a room?
If you like.
Oh no. I think hopefully I just realized that I think it's like they're set for like two minutes, but hopefully that won't close automatically. I think it asks me whether I want to close them, and I think I can just say no.
Exactly. Okay, I'm gonna go jump in with Kuba and Pietro.
Okay, cool. I'll see you in a little bit. Hey, Vlad.
Sec. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Am I late or?
You're a little bit late, but welcome. Welcome to come in. Everyone's in a breakout room at the moment. The prompt or the exercise is that we're kind of just like generating some questions of what came up during the kind of what people are curious about finding about the summer camp. Were you at the summer camp?
Yeah.
Cool. So there is some themes in the chat that came up in the initial share. We were talking about things like the venue, the sense of belonging, balance of structure and structurelessness. And so we're gonna have kind of like a fishbowl exercise. I don't know if you've had an exercise like that where people are kind of like talking four at a time, and we're gonna base that exercise on questions that come up during this breakout room. So we're just generating questions, essentially, what we're curious about, reflecting on, about what went well, what didn't go so well, what you want to grow or improve the next time. So if you're up for that, I can put you in one of the breakout rooms where they're already kind of going over that.
I mean, how long is it gonna last? If I'm, joining at the end, I can just
It's
wait.
no, it's there's still 7.5 minutes left.
I mean, I don't know. Whatever you think is best. I'm up for joining. I'm up
I'll
for
put you in
waiting.
there. I'll put you in there with Rich. I think they'll welcome
Okay.
you in there. Cool. I will assign you to room 4. You should be able to join that now. Okay. How are we doing for time? 1902. Oh, so much time.
Who?
Welcome back. Hopefully that wasn't too abrupt an ending. Um, cool. So what we're gonna do now is hear back from all the rooms with what questions came up. Could I have a volunteer to type the questions into the chat as people are?
I can do that.
Thank you, Julia. Cool. So let's just go room by room. So room one was Jesse, Sarah, and Victor. Does one of you want to share what came up in your room?
I'm like hoping what I thought was Jesse typing was Jesse taking notes. And Jesse's gonna do this right now. Is
This
that true?
was kind of Jesse taking notes. let's see. Mostly we caught up, but uh Victor posed this question, and I'm probably not going to quite do this justice, but of like, how do you go about stewarding a space in such a way that you can like encourage the sort of emergent things that you would like to happen, even though you can't like be like, I'm gonna plan for emergence. Um, and so we did a bunch of talking about like what that would mean and about containers. Uh, One thing I wrote down was a good container creates coherence so that energy can go towards more creative things than just like organizing when people will be where and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, I think that's the 30-second version.
Thank you. So room 2 was Ronan, Sines. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, and Uta. Who would like to share from that room?
Sines, you gotta go. You'll add if I forget. So first we talked about a question about, if it sounded like a festival, how did it compare to a festival from what Rich described it like? But we apart from, I think, Sinners, we've not been to festivals, so we wouldn't know what that would be like. My cat's climbing up the wall here. And our second question was more interesting, and we talked a lot about that, which was what would be our perfect summer camp, because we all felt that we didn't quite hear the call of nature as loudly as you all did, or as the ones that went did. And so we had lots of thoughts about what would it have to be for me to feel comfortable, and for me to feel called to come. And that's not a question really, that's like a whole different point for discussion. But I was very surprised to hear that the other two felt similar to me, and so I'll just leave it there. Is there anything
Great.
else, Sinners? And Ronan, of course.
Okay, cool. So we can move on to room 3, which was Alex and Julia.
So we had 3 questions. And one was, how do you organize a big event like that Microsolidarity way so it's not dreadfully stressful? Another one is, and what are the learnings for the new people who did that, from the new people who did that? What are the structures to help the group see itself and surface tension better, and this kind of tension between organizing lightly and having that kind of space that's there before there any tensions appear, more to help people not feel alone with whatever they are holding and kind of have things bubble up. And I had a question like about microsolidarity as a place where people come to search for belonging, and a microsolidarity as a place which is more like a lab for practices, and I'm hearing a lot more about that this is a lab for practices, and I'm curious to see where the center is and moving to. So I'll just take notes for that, and we can move to the next group.
Thanks, Julia. The next group was Pascal, Rich, and Vlad.
Hey, I'll give it a go. I guess our question is how to organize structures that allow for productive conflict and, allow it to turn into something that is productive before it escalates. Yeah.
So that's similar.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vlad. The next room and last room was Jocelyn, Kuba, and Pietro.
Yeah, cool. We had some questions that like came up already in other groups, like around belonging. Like to what extent is belonging created by the structures that the camp hosts created at this camp, or was belonging created more through people's own self-selection to join? If they selected themselves to join, can we even clarify that filter more? And how would we do that? And beyond the structures that were brought in at camp, like what structures or principles or elements for building belonging are universal that worked at camp, but like would also work even if someone was not super like this the center of their universe. Like, how do I create belonging? Another one was like expectations. What are our expectations around belonging at camp, particularly to what degree does belonging permeate through scale? I like what Kuba said there. It was like, what degree does belonging permeate through scale? So like if we're used to, I think the idea of creating belonging on a crew level seems to be something like quite easy to fathom, but can we do that? Should we expect that on a congregation level? Or is a congregation more a dating pool to find people you find belonging with? And what I found, what question that I have is, what if we have a lot of different crews and there's like the multiplicity? How can we create multiplicity without going beyond polarization? I experienced a little bit of people finding belonging in their identity groups in camp, and some of those actually were in tension with one another. And how can we better? Maybe it links into the conflict question. Clarify the microsolidarity approach to conflict. Clarify the microsolidarity approach to polarization. What's there? Yeah, what can we learn? And there's one question around pods at camp. There wasn't really agency to choose them, which maybe helps, maybe doesn't. But like, could we do it otherwise? How else would that? How could we improve the pod experience, particularly around how you choose who's in your pod and making it useful in relation to the camp experience that you're in? Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Jocelyn.
I have a slight quick curveball of a question. Your point 2, there was I somehow missed it. If you do have them in points, maybe we can recover it.
Around polarization,
Self-selection and filter for people joining. The next bit after that is the one I missed.
Oh yeah, what structures or principles or elements are universal? Was it that bit?
Yes. That sounds new to me.
For creating belonging. Yeah.
Super. I'll just clean it up and put it in the chat.
Thanks, Julia. So the next bit of the call that we're going to do is a fishbowl. This might take a bit of logistical setup, so bear with me. I haven't done this one yet, but hopefully it will work. So how this is going to work is we're going to have 5 people be in the fishbowl, so at the center. We'll start with 5 people who kind of feel called to speak. Maybe one of the questions like really resonated with you and you want to bring something up about that. Julius just shared the questions in the chat, so you can like review them and see which one kind of calls out to you. So 5 people will start. They will start speaking. Those people will have their video switched on. Everyone else will have their video switched off. As the conversation is flowing, if someone feels called to join in, then you can switch your video on. At which point, whoever has been in the fishbowl kind of like already, who hasn't, a person who's been there already, not the person who's just joined, if you feel like you've kind of shared and the topic doesn't really feel alive for you at that moment, then you can switch your camera off, so that there should hopefully always be 5 people with their camera switched on in the middle, talking about what's been coming up. And then hopefully it will be kind of like a flow where people are coming in and out based on kind of what resonates with you and if you like want to join that conversation. Are there any questions about that structure before we get going? Cool. Hopefully that was clear, and hopefully it'll become clearer as we.
I have
Mhm.
I have one question.
Mhm.
Do the questions go by like how they're written down? Like we go one question after the other, or like just
What we were thinking
randomly, or how
is
does it work?
just to bring up what's resonating with you. Hopefully the conversation will like kind of like be around that for a little while, and then maybe someone else can just come in with like a different topic if we feel like that we've exhausted the kind of topic that we were on already. So a bit more free flow rather than going in order.
Thanks.
And Jocelyn's just put in the chat that if you want it to be a nicer experience, you can hide all the non-video participants, and then you have that kind of way of witnessing the live conversation. And Ivan, tell me if there's anything I can do to help.
Great, thank you. I see most of you have switched your video off already, which maybe jumped the gun a little bit. But so I guess what I would ask now is for the people who feel called to start to switch their videos on.
Clarification question that might help people decide to do this. Is the idea mostly for people in the fishbowl to be people that participated in the event? Or is the idea to have a little bit of a back and forth sort of with some people coming in that were not there, asking questions, and then people that were there responding? Or yeah, what's the idea there for the
I think
dynamic?
what we thought of that is that it might be good to start with at least a few people who were there already, because I guess you can speak more to the experience and what came up, but not everyone. Maybe like 3 people that were there already and maybe 2 who weren't. Yeah, and then as we go along, then kind of anyone, even if you were there or not there, can kind of join in when you feel called to. So Alex and Jocelyn, you have your camera switched on, so I'm guessing you might want to start in the fishbowl. Yeah, can we have another Jesse? Thank you. Can we have another 2 people to join in? Great. So that's 5 people in the fishbowl. I'm gonna switch my camera off, and then whoever feels called to start with a question that resonated with them, please go ahead.
I was pretty curious about the thing Jocelyn mentioned about uh what structures or practices for belonging would work well even in settings where people aren't like belonging nerds. Um so yeah, I don't have any great insight on that at all, but it seems like a very interesting question and something that I thought about a lot in the space I've had for the last while because like it's not a space where people are like doing tons of intentional relating type stuff. So I was kind of curious how I could like introduce practices that would work well, but not feel like weirdly invasive for a group of people who are like, what the fuck are you like, why are we doing this?
I feel like I would come in on this. There is so I ran the Lesson Community Weekend. That's not right. I participated in the hosting and organization of the Lesson Community Weekend a little while after, and we tried running pods. I guess Justin and I will maybe have a conversation about that particular event. But one thing I can say is that, well, basically we tried to take some Microsolidarity things and introduce them there. And one of the learnings and one of the things I noticed is that one of the impressions I have is that what you want to do is you want to have a tighter story, or like you need to facilitate a little bit more to introduce the structure, and you need to pick the right structure. So I would say like the simpler the structure, the better, and the easier it is to find a story that works for the particular people that you want to introduce it to, the better it'll work. That's my sense. And I think hidden in the question that you asked is, yeah, sometimes it's actually not obvious exactly what makes the structure work. And you're surprised later on when you try it in a different context.
Yeah, I think something that's like important that you touched on, Alex, just now, is like there's a benefit in using structures, but not to forget the question like why are we using this structure? What's the problem it's supposed to solve? If you just say let's do some pods, it'll work. There will be belonging. Like there needs a bit more intentionality of like pods can be framed very differently based on a different environment and for different needs. Maybe even the number of people you have in a pod, or the rhythm at which they meet, or the particular people that you constellate together within the pod. Sometimes it's helpful to constellate people who are very wildly different because you're intentionally trying to support a practice of meeting across difference. And other times you might want to be like supporting people to find an affinity group and a real sense of like safety within a challenging environment. So there's like these considerations of what do you want the pod to support, like in the same way, what do you want the gathering to do? We were reading The Art of Hosting, that book before, and they really started off with what's the gathering meant to make happen? What's the pod meant to make happen? I think when you get to the why and the purpose of what it's trying to do, it becomes much more universal. There's not like universal, just do pods and it's enough, but just really the clarity of invitation, I think, is important.
I feel that then connects also to the point about being able to tell the right story, right? Because you are so much more able to tell the right story if you or tell a story at all if you know why you're telling the story or where the story is going, you know.
Oh, I think I said The Art of Hosting was The Art of Gathering. That's the book. Yeah, storytelling.
One of the reasons why I left my videos on was because I saw that like, oh, was it the structure? So was it the filter? And I'm going to come out and say that a lot of it was the filter. As like, it's like, honestly, it's one of the reasons for me to come back. And it's one of the things that's really, it's oddly like both really affirming and disaffirming for Microsolidarity, because Microsolidarity has this thing of like, yeah, you need the seed. You need to vibe, like people need to vibe off of someone, right? And this like, I think we talked about this at the gathering as well, at the summer camp. It's just like, oh, it's so much easier to bring Microsolidarity somewhere if you have 2 or 3 people that can model the style of interaction. It's actually really difficult to bring it as one person. And yeah, I think the filter is a big part of it. Why it's cool.
I wonder, so even if it is the filter, and even if it's not any structures that we have set up explicitly to facilitate belonging, I wonder if we can still kind of harness the filter and look at the group of people that have gathered and been filtered out to see what kind of structures we kind of establish implicitly, or what kind of little practices we do without thinking about it, and try to find inspiration for setting up explicit structures there. But then it's obviously quite difficult, because it's like if you have a bunch of people who are all facilitate co-belonging with each other, then it's kind of like asking fish to describe water, like it's hard to notice those things that you do naturally all the time. But I wonder if we can look at that a little bit.
Totally agree. And also, I think it's still totally valuable, and I think the structure is still totally relevant and like important. It's just like my experience at the community weekend was just like, yeah, okay. It's actually like taking them out of the context where they are and putting them somewhere else is actually another skill that's also difficult. and a bunch of it was the filter, and like figuring out what's the is a whole task in itself.
For me, the magic happens when these structures kind of merge and become some subconscious thing, so that you don't like explicitly do it, but when it like naturally somehow changes your um, the way you act, and then it doesn't feel like introducing a practice anymore to other people, but it just feels like you're naturally acting this way. So I think the structures are almost like, okay, now we're really intentionally doing it. And then you reach a point where you, okay, now I'm just doing it without thinking about it. And then it's really easy to bring this to other people in a way that doesn't feel artificial, kind of, if um you understand what I'm.
So I think I hear what you're saying. So, uh, like if we apply that example or that pattern that you were just expressing, Pietro, to like the discovery, or to like how to create more belonging, right? Uh, I think what I'm hearing said is like, well, like notice the things that people do that seem to like, um, to create that kind of an effect. And then like, so people just sort of do that naturally once you sort of like bring a new object, like make an object available for like observation. So belonging is the thing. All right. Like first step seems like, all right, well, notice like, when you feel belonging or when you don't. Notice when other people do something that affects it. And if you hold that intention, long enough and spread it, then people are just going to sort of like um organically start being or doing those things with that seem to create it without intent, but like intentionally. And I think I'm hearing you're pointing to like the next step as well. You just spend enough time intentionally doing things like sort of faking it or like doing it on purpose, then you kind of come to a point of just being it, and it no longer requiring conscious attention. Did I say back roughly what you said?
Yes. I was like, I think reacting to Kubo when he said like if you introduce this, or like also this thing about you need two people to do it, if you want to do it, like if you want to model it, but also you can, I mean, it's harder as a one person. And yeah, I think that's what I was trying to, yeah, for me, the problem in bringing these practices to someone else in an intentional way is much harder to do it, um, because then it seems a little artificial for me, and then the other person notices that and brings that up. So yeah, more or less what you said, but also
Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. I've had this experience of coming into a new container where they've got a lot of structure and like they've kind of already adopted that structure. It's very natural to them. But coming in new, like people can sort of take the action of like, okay, here's this thing we do, and I'm going to teach it to you. And like then whenever that happens, it sort of like decreases my level of energy and like makes me less like it has the paradoxical effect of not bringing me in, but sort of like pushing me out, right? Uh, so if instead you're just embodying the thing, right? Or I think that the reason why that happens is because if you directly tell someone something without there being a need for it, or without them being clear for the need for it, then they don't have a reason to want it, and it just feels like sort of artificially pushing something, right? Uh, so the counterexample seems to be just be the thing, and and maybe make it explicit what you're doing and why.
I like this question of what's possible with just yourself or with a diet or a small crew. People really like practicing this stuff. In my life, I've been playing with this idea that I've come to call ghost crewing because I believe that I'm in a crew with people that I live with and they don't know they're in the crew. So I call this my ghost crew. But like I show up to my relationships with them with all of these ideas about what it means for me to crew with people. And I have found this effective enough for my needs. These people are adverse to like over intellectualization. You know, it's not fun for them to sit down to a meeting or to be told like, let's just do it this way. It'll generate belonging. Like they're not there for that. And I kind of went through phases of feeling like I needed to create buy-in for them to get on board. And then I was like, I don't need to do that. Like, I'm on board to what I believe in, and like that needs to be enough. Like, I need to figure out how to navigate this social scene with that being enough. And this power of invitation is one that I like talk about a lot with people. My interview with Pietro, like I got so jazzed by how Pietro showed up to camp because Pietro did this thing where he like created this invitation into his own internal development experience. And it created this scene where like it was so fun and playful. And that's what I'm obsessed with is like for me, if I'm like feeling a tension, if I can transform that into an invitation and then be okay with how people react to that, then I can create for myself like a positive experience, even if people aren't super on board with all this microsolidarity stuff or like what is parts work or what is nonviolent communication. I know that I can model it. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. Hmm.
Okay, I want to ping on that because that was very exciting and inspiring, Sarah. Um, Jesse's just repeated it in the text as well in the chat, transforming tensions into invitations. I feel like this is the this is the answer to the what's the micro-solidarity way of doing conflict. It's the thing that creates some of the highest like the most satisfying experiences, and also when it's not understood, when the method is not understood, it creates the most frustration for people. Jocelyn's got a course coming up soon where she's sharing the skills of how do you mediate a conflict. And I'm like, that's a great course. People should go to the course. But there's something before people even register as conflict, where I think there is a sequence of moves that you can do that it means that you don't actually wind up in a conflict. You wind up in this like self-discovery and agency enhancement and just like delight and wow, everything upgraded. It's like an evolutionary move. And it starts from I'm feeling some kind of discomfort and I've noticed that. And I think it's mostly about me. That's an attitude, right? Like this emotional signal I'm feeling is mostly giving me information about me. And it's maybe pointing at things that are happening out there. But I think the micro-solidarity move is to stay with the inwards, to get really curious about what kind of needs does this signal? What kind of like what values are at stake? Like what's being activated? What stories? What parts? Like what are my principles? Like all of this information is coming up with that moment of discomfort. And then to get to the point of making an invitation or to activating your agency, that's a huge leap to do that by yourself. And so after taking some responsibility and having that inner curiosity, then it's like doing the vulnerable move of asking a friend to say, "Hey, I'm really upset about this, or I'm struggling with this, or I think this is wrong. Can you help me make sense of it and like help me turn it into some kind of constructive proposal that people are going to be excited to engage with?" The people that know how to do that are just like rocketing forwards, both in terms of like their own satisfaction and there's this kind of almost like baseline attractiveness to them. Like people want to be around people like that, because it's like every little frustration just turns into a little update, like an agency move, an innovation, and like, oh, I was really annoyed about the sound system, and so now we've got a different sound system, or we've rearranged the space, and it's even better now. In contrast to, oh, I felt a bad feeling in me. Probably that's mostly information about other people. Probably other people doing something wrong. um, I need to ask, or I need to make demands of the whole system to be a different way. And I'm not even necessarily going to frame those demands in any kind of concrete request that people can engage with. I'm just going to let people know my conclusions about who I blame or who as a generic class of people rather than any kind of like specific individual. and sort of give up my hands for any sense of responsibility for how things could be different. And that, in my experience, doesn't it kind of closes things down. It doesn't open it up. It's not very attractive. It doesn't feel fun. It doesn't feel joyful to be around. Um, and what I just described there, I think, is like pretty advanced level of metacognition and courage and creativity, and requires a huge amount of safety and training. And it's just a big ask. And I'd love it if one of the things that we were known for is articulating that process, refining it, adapting it, filling all the gaps that I just said. I'm such a biased, and like my thinking was always so lumpy, and that's fine. It's like the start, and having other people flesh it out. I'd love it if that we were really incubating sort of best practice in this way, because I think it's something very distinctive, and it's, like I said, it's just so fun to be around people that know how to play that game. Julia, I'm really curious what moved you as you jumped into the circle.
Yeah, what moved me was that the invitation of this from tension to invitation, and I think what for me is true is that there is a design aspect to it, the kind of show not tell, because you can tell people how to behave, and that's really tedious. But I find that in the design of things, there is generosity, basically what I'm trying to say. So everything I noticed that things are oversized. And we talked with Alex about this, how to, the experience of preparing for a camp. And he's like, there's slack capacity. And it feels like there's slack capacity in everything. There's a slack capacity in kitchen crews. There's slack capacity in scheduling, slack capacity in expectations. So it's kind of generous by design. I remember a moment in a camp when there was some kitchen crisis, and what you often expect is like somebody going to look for who screwed up or something like that. Instead, it was like, throw more resources at it. And so there's that kind of there's that kind of generosity, which I feel is not really talked about, but it's kind of factored in as a design element of everything. And I think that translates into me wanting to be generous, or finding it easy to be generous with annoyances that I have, because I see how they are dealt with when they are dealt with around me. So I start copying it without ever cognitively being told what to do. So generosity for me is a big one.
There's generous frustrations is to go with your joyful panic.
Exactly. And for panic to be joyful, you need that capacity.
Yes, but this also like brings me back again to the question, like how much of this slack capacity is because there are people there who have slack capacity, who are like who can embody this way and who can then have some who can step in if there is a crisis, because you need that. And I experienced a lot of that at the camp. So yeah.
So this notion of slack capacity, I think, is really interesting. And the thing that it brought up for me is the difference between the amount of energy that I feel I have when my energy is contracted and frustrated versus like the expanded amount of energy I have when I feel like there's when there's like a kind of a kind of different mode that I can be in, where I feel like I have that slack capacity, where I don't feel as though I'm tired and frustrated. So it's not as though like more needs to be brought available. Like maybe a shift, can just be made so as the people are have more energy to show up.
I just put my camera on again because actually what Pietro just mentioned, like I felt there was so much slack capacity in the hosting team. It was like Jesse, Sarah Pelham, Miriam, and Alex in like the core hosting team, and then there was Jonas, myself, and Rich kind of supporting them, and then there was the extra wings of like Natty and Guy and Nikki, like when there was a conflict, it just felt so resourced that even though it was like, ooh, conflict, there's a sense of like, wow, we're such a deep bed of support and opportunity here. And I can imagine it even being wider. That's why I also want to like, I love being able to mediate conflicts, and I think it's great that I can, and that a few people can, and yet I am actually, my mission is that it's like a baseline skill that anyone in the network or in the community has. It's not like like of course some people might be more specialized in it and want to go really deep, but that we all have like a baseline understanding of like a few structures or moves to make to support a conversation, because that like increases the Slack capacity just so much. And you know that there's people who just be like, oh yeah, I'll be here for any one-on-one conversation that people want to have, or oh, yeah, I'll do like a small group discussion over here. Just really like to be that adaptive and responsive rather than reactive to conflict. I think there's a real upskilling on a congregation level. Kind of goes a bit like, oh,
go ahead.
As we mentioned, one more thing around that, which is like, I think we're focusing a lot on increasing our capacity for leadership within the network, and we're doing a good job of that, like with the successional, like bringing in more people who can practice hosting, like the hosting team this time. Like last year, I got a real up leveling in my hosting capacity by just hosting the summer camp, and this year I saw the host like in 1 week really like woof, and also the cooking team. And I think it's the same that could be happening on other skill dimensions, which is, for example, around like hosting, navigating conflict and supporting difficult conversations. Maybe there's other elements as well. Jesse, what were you going to say?
I'm just noticing somewhat of like a through line or something in a number of these things that I haven't quite figured out how to like put this succinctly, but that there's something about like complaining not being a default mode of interaction that I feel like is sort of like a significant part of all this, where like to have Slack capacity, you need to have people just like to be able to trust each other's responses to things, like in that you know that the people that you're with are going to respond to challenging things by dealing with them and not bitching about them. Or, I mean, you can bitch about them some, sure, but like mostly dealing with them. And same with the idea of being generous by design is like to create space for that, people have to be action oriented and not complaint oriented. And that's one of my favorite things about like the people that I've met through Microsolidarity network, and like my favorite people outside of the Microsolidarity network, is that there's like a dealing with it bias and like very little like spending time focused on being pissed off about whatever the thing is.
Yeah, dude, I love that. I love that. I was going to say briefly before I hear what Ivan has showed up with. I think the two big messages that I left camp with was, one, this thing about, yeah, how can we get clearer about the process of going from tension to invitation, and that articulating that flow, because I think it's reasonably distinctive and really powerful, and articulating it will actually put some people off, I think, in a useful way. It'll filter some people out who are like, no, I really disagree with that mode. I think there's really good reasons to disagree with that mode, and it's a different default than a lot of groups have got. That I just think will help increase coherence. And then the other big message for me is just like, I'm just being humbled. It keeps happening. I'm such an arrogant person that it really takes a lot of humblings for me to really get the message. But seeing how inaccessible a lot of the concepts are, and how like, for example, how do we design a pod to be maximally effective? Like, that knowledge has not really landed, or how to make the most of a pod. That's not really well understood. And to me, that's kind of like some of the 101 stuff. So I'm just like getting confronted with like, oh, I'm not actually good at that part of the design process. And I could learn, but it should be nicer to have just more different types of brains getting in there and helping articulate some of these building blocks in a really concrete, really accessible way. That's just like, oh, gotcha. I see what I'm supposed to do and why it's important, and I can make it my own. And this is straightforward and obvious. And I'm just like curious who's going to be that person. What did you show up with, Ivan?
Yeah, it was just kind of on this point of like, can't remember exactly how you worded it, but like tension to kind of like a proposal or something. I guess what was coming up for me when we were talking about that is like maybe a fear of bypassing something by going straight to a proposal, or this idea of like that complaining is perhaps not the most useful way to do things. And I totally hear that. And I hear that it's like easier to be kind of more easier to deconstruct than to actually bring something forth and like be constructive. But I'm wondering whether like the what makes complaining maybe not so useful is maybe a lack of vulnerability. What I mean by that is that usually if there's a tension within me, it's like maybe I was hurt by someone, by what they did or by what they said. And so I feel like my own conflict journey, what's been useful is being able to go to, I was hurt by that, rather than kind of more like, when you did this, I don't know, rather than it's more of an attack, I think maybe before, or like going straight to blame rather than owning kind of like that I was hurt. And so, yeah, I'm curious like where vulnerability fits into all this and where maybe going straight to like a solution bypasses kind of like being with like an emotional reality that's come up.
I'm looking at Jocelyn like, come on, you got this shit down.
She's the expert.
I'm just listening, like reading something that Pascal wrote and just thinking about the friendship being the secret sauce. But I was something that came up as you were speaking, Ivan, was around like complaining artfully. I just wrote that in the chat. Like that capacity to complain in a way that you're actually not disempowering yourself as you complain. I think complaint can be very disempowering when you say, like if I say like, let me try to think of an example. Like something that creates a generic sweeping statement of like maybe something I saw recently. Like, yeah, people here aren't good at taking responsibility for themselves. It's like, okay, well, what's the power that you can bring back to yourself is like what do you need? And that's again going back to the turning tensions into invitations. Like what would you like to see in the field? If you're actually reflecting on your own needs. It's like nonviolent communication basics, but if you find your own need behind that, it's like, okay, self-responsibility, how can you be that change and bring that in? And it's not to say that it's not true that there's a low capacity for self-responsibility in the field, but how far am I going to get when I'm only focusing on what's wrong with the group, rather than being like, let me see what I need and find a few other people who might have a similar complaint and be like, I think there's some little meme we talk about positive gossip, like gossiping about people in terms of what do you think that person needs, rather than like what's wrong with that person, how annoying they are. In the same way, like positive complaining, like complaining together in a way that you can come together to demonstrate something that you'd like to see changed. I think that element of like radical self-responsibility, not on an individuated level even, but as a sort of collectively resourced self-responsibility is so powerful. Like I think I was having a bit of a complaint about, oh, no one sees me in the group. And no one knows that I'm in, like, have been on the support crew or my places in the network. And I noticed there was like, it wasn't that I wanted to make everyone feel bad, but there was something in me that was feeling a bit resentful about or powerless in not being known and then not being used as a resource of experience within the camp. So then I had Rich and Jonas supporting me with like, well, what's going on for you? What do you need? How can we make it visible who you are and that you're a resource that people can draw upon? And then I felt more confident to share in the group, like, oh, I feel a bit invisible in who I am. And I think it's important and helpful that people know that you can like ask me all sorts of questions and maybe I can share more. And someone in the group said, why don't you do a Q&A tomorrow? So the next day, Jonas, Rich, and I did that Q&A. And Rich and Jonas intentionally said, Jocelyn, you sit in the middle and you field most of the questions. So they like helped me to turn my complaint inner turbulence into quite an empowered move. And that helped me, rather than me continue to go inside and just be like, the group doesn't see me and no one cares. And it's like, it was a very clear demonstration of that for me.
I'm just mindful of the time. I want to hear what you wanted to share, Kuba, but maybe we could welcome kind of everyone back in, and please share with us, Kuba, what you were resonating with.
Yeah, I don't think I'll add anything particularly new. I just felt really strongly about when I complained, usually it's an invitation to brainstorm and to kind of unite together in this suboptimal situation that we're having in some way, and an invitation to like do something about it together. So when I heard words around that, I was just like, yes, I'm gonna jump in and like say something, but then everything else was said, more or less. So that's it.
Thank you. I noticed a funny irony in the example you shared, Jocelyn, when you were like, this person is like, no one around here is taking any responsibility, and kind of like the lack of responsibility that that person is showing by even complaining about that, I thought was quite funny.
Can I
Julia?
just quickly add? Yeah,
Yes.
I was thinking that it's interesting that whenever I feel pissed off with something, then the last thing I want to do is like go to some session about tension or go to an empathy person, because I don't even know that this is like that kind of tension. And that takes me back to this having this general slack in the system, because I'll probably complain to somebody in the kitchen crew or somewhere else. So having everyone kind of relaxed in some ways is a kind of organism way of dealing with it. Yeah.
Great.
One last word from Rich, just to say how excited I am about that, Julia. And it's a move that I have practiced at times. I think we can develop it. Like I said, it's very advanced to expect people to go always in this very elegant move. But as a very advanced practitioner, you can actually be the catalyst that makes that happen, that kind of receives complaint and just like gently and invisibly turns it into a constructive move. And it's like a critical mass of people like that in a room just makes everything flow like delicious gravy.
Thank you, everyone. That was super fun and super generative. I was a bit worried about the fishbowl exercise. I was like, is it really gonna work? But it worked out really amazingly. We have 5 minutes left of the call, so not much. So I thought maybe we would just end with my favorite way to end calls. Um, a gratitude sharing. And so I was just thinking popcorn style, if something comes up that you're grateful for, please just jump in and share with us. Oh, but Jocelyn, I know that maybe you have something to close the call, some things at the end, so I'm not sure if
Just
there's
a
time
couple
for
of
that.
practical announcements, but this is nice first, and then I'll do that in case people have to hop off in 5 minutes.
Okay, cool.
I just want to appreciate my gratitude for the fishbowl flowing like delicious gravy. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm grateful for all the collective intelligence. First thing I want to do is put this conversation into AI and summarize everything that came up.
I want to put gratefulness out for transforming tension into invitation, because this is a move I have witnessed pulled, but I've not heard it verbalized in this kind of snappy slogan way, and that's gonna stick with me, I think.
I'm grateful to see Sunis and Pascal and Uta and Jocelyn. I think the original first Microsolidarity gathering crew from forever ago. It's so rad to see you back here, still here with us.
I'm so grateful to be in the Microsolidarity vibe again. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Grateful for the question gathering process and the questions that were there. They felt quite fertile ground for the conversation.
Yeah, I want to thank Victor for just summarizing what I said so that it might be more clear and giving me a chance to add to that.
I'm ending with a lot of appreciation for our host, Julia and Ivan. Thank you. Y'all have this skill of like capturing the essence of what was shared and skillfully moving us into it. Thank you for bringing that today.
I am grateful, yeah, for this super lively discussion. So many short, snappy phrases capturing the essence. I love the ghost cruise and just reading in chat about soil fertility versus yield. It's like really nice mental reminders for things. Thank you.
I'm grateful how the host Ivan and Julia managed to create a structure where I felt like we were weaving connection between each other while also learning something. Just this nice juice of like doing and being together.
I've been super reinvigorated by the Microsolidarity vibe and all that you all bring. I find this call is one that I'll listen to again, I'm sure, and is wow, so many fruits, so much written down already, and so much more to write down when I next hear it. Thank you all.
Jocelyn, we have 30 seconds.
Amazing. Okay. Then, if you'd like to join again, we'll be doing this in a month's time, the first Thursday of November. It'll be a different format. My dear friend Lottie, who was also at summer camp, will be joining me. We're hosting a session on the art of relationships, looking at the relationship anarchy smorgasbord and how you can up-level your friendships by getting more into what you actually want. And also, I'm just going to drop in a bunch of links for, I hope the format's okay. Yeah, there you go. Really important. So Julia does an amazing job of putting the newsletter out. I think it's like roughly once every month or so. And if you want to put anything in the newsletter, please do so by Friday. That's tomorrow. You can see that first link will take you to Google Doc where you'll see just all the elements that you can put in, and Julia will create it and send it out on Friday. Like, for example, if there's any like little thoughts or inspirations that come up from this call that you just want to put even in one paragraph and be like, had this thought, or a tweet that you've seen and you want to just take a snapshot, or Ivan saying he wants to like transcribe it and get ChatGPT to put like the summary together, or something else came up from summer camp that you've written, or something that an event that you're holding that's related to Microsolidarity in your area or online, it's all welcome to be there, or Microsolidarity adjacent. And then there's the Vibes program and Crewing program coming up again. We haven't confirmed or put the registration exactly on, but it's all going to happen. 5 people who have to go. We'll put the information up there, I think, within the next week. But if you want to register your interest and make sure you don't miss the dates, you can click that interest form and just put your name there. And if you've joined either of those courses before, you get to join again for free, because we like having returning participants, because as you can feel in this room, when people come with some background experience, it just really amplifies the vibe and seeds a really great learning environment. And last of all, I put my mediation course again, because I just heard a lot of people being very interested in conflict, and I actually am running it again because of how the conflict transformation process went there. And a lot of people said, how do we learn to do what you're doing? And I'd love to respond to that. That tension to learn sounded like an invitation, and I respond very well to invitations. So there's me responding to the invitation and running it again through the hum, starting on November 18th, 5 Mondays in a row, 1.5 hours each session. Yeah, I think that's all. So thanks for being here. Thank you so much to Ivan and Julia. If anyone wants to come and host or co-host with someone else or with me, you're very welcome. Obviously, next month I've got Lottie doing it with me, but the month after, December, is still an open slot. So you can make it what's meaningful to you, and be lovely to work with you like that. Ciao for now. Feel free to unmute yourself and say bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye
everyone.
bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.